Alexandra Palace over there, shimmering on the distant hill on the other side of the Moselle Valley. Yeah, North London's Moselle Valley, not the one in Germany. And the name doesn't even have anything to do with it. We will be going today on a pilgrimage that partly explains the name of that river. The weather today is somewhere between the beanie and the baseball cap, so I'll start with the beanie and then we'll see how we go. Also, before I get going into what today's video is about, I just want to say a big shout out to Carl, who I just met back there. Lovely fella, stopped me in the street as I was getting my camera ready, said I love your videos. Today is one of the most requested places for me to shoot a video. I hadn't realised people have been asking me to make a video about Muswell Hill for the last 3 years at least. Since I did a video down here in Crouch End, people were like, well, surely Muswell Hill is next. Finally, I'm doing it. But the subject of today's video, or the object I should say, we'll go through the litany of things that people have told me in the comments, from the first Wetherspoons pub to a very famous Brit Invasion band. Some great stuff, but that's not why I'm going to Muswell Hill. I'm going searching for the site of the Mossy Well. And I am aware a lot of my viewers aren't in the UK. They might be thinking, what? Why? Well, it was a famous site of pilgrimage in the Middle Ages. That's why. I'm not aware of the established pilgrimage route to the Mossy Well. So I'm just going to go from Crouch Hill through Crouch End Broadway and then up to Muswell Hill Broadway. The majestic Hornsey Town Hall over there. That's a real Art Deco gem. It is in my Crouch End video, which I will link to below. This amazing clock tower here should be a site of pilgrimage. Again, I've talked about this in my Crouch End video and also in my book, This Other London. And I talked about the idea that all the hippies and all the creative people were drawn here in the 60s because they believed that the clock tower was the junction of two powerful ley lines. Well, what I noticed in the comments on my Crouch End video is that people said that the reason Bob Dylan came here to record, and there is a great Bob Dylan story about Crouch End, is that he believed that all the ley lines in the world converged here beneath the clock tower in Crouch End. I love that. Crouch End has been one of my favourite places in the world ever since I lived on the Haringey ladder as a student in my final year. I really genuinely love it. But that is not the aim. It's Muswell Hill, which actually, I went to Muswell Hill I think before I came to Crouch End and made a grisly discovery in the early hours of the morning. So the Oxfam bookshop back there always delivers great London books. I haven't actually got a copy of Nairn's London, would you believe? I've been looking for, this is the 2014 reprint, but this is the one I've been looking for. But look, so we will be using this book probably when we get home, but that'll be a useful source. The main book we'll be using today I brought with me. This amazing treat from 1868. You can see it's lived a life. It's William Howitt's Northern Heights of London, and it's got some, it's got the essentials in there. Not as much about Muswell as you might think.
Of this place being a continuation of the ridge of hill running north of London from Hampstead to this spot, little seems to have been recorded by the topographers. It is a fine, easy walk from Highgate thither, with extensive views over town and country. It is about 5.5 miles from London, with the advantage of the Great Northern Railway running just below it through Hornsey.
One of my favourite London books, though, is The Fringe of London by Gordon S. Maxwell. And in it, he talks about the way of the topographical rambler, the creed of the topographical rambler. I love it. And he talks about the different types of walks. And this falls into the category of the type of walk that he says where you follow the scent of a clue. You just follow the scent of a clue. And he also talks about the journey that happens after the walk in the land of books. And I get so excited by things like this, because that's what I'm really doing, is I'm following the scent of a clue, is the address, the potential address for where the site of the Mossy Well, the holy well that cured the king of the Scots, we'll talk about that later, where it's said to be. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if that is the site. We don't know until we get there. It's great. So we're just going along Park Road here, and then we're going to turn into Prior Road up to Muswell Hill Broadway before we go hunting for the Mossy Well. Hopefully that's where we finish. Wow, I love these flats here. Aren't they amazing? Kind of modernisty, 1920s, 1930s like. Ramsey Court. Made a couple of videos following the River Moselle, which rises up there in Highgate Woods, or Highgate Woods I should say. And that passes through Priory. I remember going through here on that walk. I'll link to all of the relevant videos down below. We're going to go in a big loop up Muswell Hill, along the Broadway and down to the Mossy Well. Cranley Gardens. I mean, a place forever associated with the serial killer Dennis Nilsen. And I do confess now to previously misattributing Nilsen's crimes to Crouch End and its macabre history of the undead. People have correctly pointed out this is actually Muswell Hill, not Crouch End. So when I was a student living on the Haringey ladder, one night we went looking for a late night drink, and we'd heard there was a place up at Muswell Hill where they were open after midnight. So we headed off from Whiteman Road up to Muswell Hill, got there, place was shut. Was it shut? I feel like it was shut. Anyway, walking back, it was quite a long walk. We decided to cut the corner and we got lost. Bearing in mind, this is in 1991, right? So it's got an A to Z. I don't think we had an A to Z with us. And we thought we could cut the corner back to our house on Whiteman Road. And we found ourselves, at one point, we were wandering around, didn't know where we were, and we found ourselves here in Cranley Gardens, and we just went, oh my God. Because bearing in mind, Nilsen's crimes were, I'll put the date on the screen, I feel like it's 86. 1985, 1986, so it was still quite fresh in the mind, and we were all a bit spooked by it. One of his victims actually came from the village where I grew up, which is very, very sad, very, very tragic. And on this channel here, you'll see a film I made with Nick Papadimitriou called The London Perambulator. My first YouTube videos were made with Nick, posted in 2006, and Nick was actually in prison with Dennis Nilsen when Dennis Nilsen was first sent down. It's a terrible, macabre story, but it's bizarre. It's also a bizarre story. It's in that film, The London Perambulator. I won't try and recount it again, but.
So I ended up in Wormwood Scrubs in 1976, March. I was sent down from the Middlesex Crown Court, held at the Middlesex Guildhall near Westminster, opened by Sir Montague Sharp in 1907.
Did you ever go back there as an adult?
Yeah, in 1983 I was in there with Dennis Nilsen, the serial killer. He was in the cell next to me. He gave me, I remember I was on this drug that used to knock me out every lunchtime, and about 3 days after he arrived I dozed off on my cell bed. It was during association, so all the cell doors were opened, and when I opened my eyes, Nilsen was standing in my doorway looking at me. He wrote a poem about me called Silver Boy. He said the silver boy lies on his bed as if he's dead. I reckon it crossed his mind to strangle me. It would have been a real coup in the media. You know, he's just been sent down for killing people and he's killed someone within days of getting his life sentence.
That's a really solid chippy over there, the Fish Palace. I remember going there after I went to Alexandra Palace about 10 years ago. Really, really good chippy. So this point here answers the question of whether we'll be going to Alexandra Palace on today's walk. And the answer to that is no, because we're going straight up the hill. That would be too much of a detour today. I'm trying to remember if it is in it. It's got to be in a video, surely not. If not, we will do an Alexandra Palace video one day. Now we ascend Muswell Hill, or Muswell Hill, Muswell Hill, I think at one point as well. Lots of different alternative names. We'll go into those in a second. This is a steep old climb. You can see why Howitt called his book The Northern Heights of London. I don't even think this is the highest point either. I think that's Highgate, isn't it? Or the top of Hampstead Heath. Up we go. And here is the northern part of the Parkland Walk, which I didn't do when I did the Parkland Walk video. I think I only went as far as Queen's Wood. And I left this bit out, so maybe we'll do that when we go to Alexandra Palace. We'll take the railway to Alexandra Palace. Now, I am quite puffed out, I'm sure you can hear. Nearly at the summit of Muswell Hill. Oh my lord, that's a steep old climb. I'd forgotten how steep it was. So around the Broadway, pick up a couple of references. We might need to consult the books. And then we find the Mossy Well. And whoa, that is quite some view from up here, which you would hope for after that climb, wouldn't you? These are interesting looking iron bollards here beside the road. I wonder what the story is there. Will we find something in our newly acquired book? The Mossy Well pub, which is a J.D. Wetherspoons, but it is not the original, the first J.D. Wetherspoons. That's now something else. It is a fine Broadway here at Muswell Hill, but it's really lacking a kind of magic clock tower, isn't it? You need the magic clock tower lit by the energy of all the world's ley lines converging beneath it. If you haven't got that, I mean, you know, you are going to be slightly inferior to your neighbour down the hill, aren't you? Of course, the first Wetherspoons pub is itself a place of pilgrimage, and I am going to go there and not to the home of Ray Davies from the Kinks. And this is the view north, looking out to Hertfordshire towards Potter's Bar. Isn't that astonishing? I am going to give up. I'm going to the site of the first Wetherspoons. It's quite still another over half an hour in the opposite direction. I just have to turn around and walk back. So yes, I'm not going to do that. It's 4:30. You have to go on these wild goose chases every now and again. Every now and again. You can't say I didn't try. And it also gives me an excuse for not going to Denmark Terrace, where the Kinks grew up. And they had an album apparently called the Muswell Hillbillies. I got that from the comments. That is not in William Howitt's 1868 The Northern Heights. Neither is the first Wetherspoons pub, which also came from the comments as well. There were some great comments. People pointed out that Nielsen was from Muswell Hill. Lots of people talking about the Kinks. Lots of people talking about the first Wetherspoons. I think that's it. But they were great comments. I mean, look at these views from up here. It's astonishing. I wonder how it affects the psyche of the people living up here, that they're always looking down on London and looking out across beyond London. Even in the 19th century, Muswell Hill was considered a fairly remote rural hilltop hamlet, and it was dominated by a number of large estates and grand houses that obviously enjoyed the incredible views from up here on the hill. It also, back in time, would have benefited from the fact that it had rather sweet air compared to the city below, and also, of course, it had great water. And just down there, I always felt that church there should be the site of the Mossy Well, of the Muswell, the place of pilgrimage, but it isn't. It does mark the way we go, though, I think. The Everyman is a rather fine building over there. Fantastic old, well, I would say it's probably like a 1920s, 1930s cinema. So now's probably a pretty good time to consult Howitt, London's Northern Heights.
Norden says that Muswell Hill, called also Pincenol Hill, there was sometime a chapel dedicated to Our Lady of Muswell, of whom, of course, there has been an image and a great resort of pilgrims. This arose from a miraculous cure said to have been performed on a king of Scots, who in some early time had been divinely directed to Muswell Hill and healed by the waters of a well there. This well was called Mouse Well, or Muswell, probably originally Mosswell, on a spot where the chapel stood. The fame of the well, however, departed at the Reformation, and in the reign of Queen Elizabeth, when Norden wrote, its supernatural virtues had all evaporated.
Wikipedia states that the King of the Scots is Malcolm IV, but all the older books seem to say that it wasn't recorded who the king was. So whether that's someone being a little bit cheeky on the Wikipedia entry, and also the land was said variously to have belonged to the Order of St John, the Priory of St John, who are obviously very powerful, but also the nunnery, the nunnery also there at Clerkenwell. I think the nuns are more commonly associated with the ownership of the land where the Holy Well was situated. And it is apparently just down the hill here, just down Muswell Hill Road. And I've seen the photograph of a plaque, but it is an old plaque. Is it still there? Is our pilgrimage about to be complete? The well was in use right into the 1870s. It still apparently had the fairest water, the fairest spring in Muswell Hill. So when some of the wealthier people tried to restrict access to it from the local poor people, there was a bit of an uproar, and a subscription was raised to have the access given to everyone in the area. But shortly afterwards it was covered over, bricked over and built over. And the River Moselle gets its name from the area, and the area gets its name from the well, the Mossy Well. Mosser's Well, Mossy Well, the Mouse Well. That's where the Moselle gets its name from. Nothing to do with the place in Germany. My wife took a bit of convincing about that, but there you go. And this is the other end of Cranley Gardens, Dennis Nilsson's serial killer's Cranley Gardens. And I just noticed that the house is marked on Apple Maps, which is a bit macabre, isn't it? And here is also access to the Parkland Walk as well. But again, we'll do that another day. Highgate Wood here beside the road. A remnant of what this top of the hill would have looked like. The pilgrim trail cutting through the woodland. And Highgate Wood has legends of its own. I came here in the Moselle video, so you can look at it there, but obviously it wouldn't be a wood without stories of witches and ghosts and all the good stuff. Now there is a plaque over there, but it's not the right address. Let's zoom in and see what does it say. What does it say? No, it is not the Mossy Well, but we're not far away. We're very close. It feels appropriate for this pilgrim trail that we must now pass through a section of the woods before we reach the site of the Holy Well. And the River Moselle has a number of sources which feed it that rise up here on this high ground. One of them is just down there near the cafe. Now I thought that number 40, Muswell Hill Road, where I saw the photo of the plaque, was one of these houses here. But of course, I think that's 38. What we have here is a builder's yard where I think number 40 used to be, and I when I first looked this up, it's a few months ago now actually, probably about 6 months ago, I did notice that the builder's yard stood on that. This is number 40. If you look up 40 Muswell Hill Road, this is it. Which would make sense in some ways, although a house was built with the spring in the grounds after the Our Lady of Muswell was demolished. But there you go, there are photographs of it. I don't think I'll be able to use them, unfortunately, because they'll be copyright protected, but I think this is the site of the Muswell, the site of pilgrimage, the Holy Well. What we do have over there, though, is a blue plaque for Peter Sellers, just along from the site of the Mossy Well. The fact that there is no plaque, or that I've just basically missed it, I don't think I have, doesn't take away from the power of this location in the story of London, in the mythology of London. It's one of the sacred sites that are scattered around the city. We have a number of holy wells and springs and places of worship, places of ancient worship, Because obviously if there's a spring there, it wasn't invented in the 12th century when it was recorded in 1119, I think, is when it becomes a holy well. There would have been a spring and a well here before that people would have drawn from. In the woods behind me there are prehistoric earthworks, trenches and earthworks. The people that use those earthworks would have also venerated these springs that rise in the high ground here up in the northern heights. I love adventures like this, following the scent of the clue. As Gordon S. Maxwell says, the way the topographical rambler is often hard, sometimes muddy, but always rewarding or full of surprises or something like that. And it was an amazing journey for me today. I'm so glad I finally did this walk. So time to sign off. As I always like to say, I look forward to seeing the next walk, wherever that may be. And by the way, the comments on this video will be great. They'll be better than the video. There's a lot of people wanting me to make this video that have a lot to say about things that I missed out, that I didn't, or got wrong, places I didn't go. There'll be lots of information about Muswell Hill. It's part of the reason I was able to do this video, from the information that people provided in the comments. So dive down in the comments, have a read. If you know anything about the area and you want to contribute, please do. The comments section of these videos are amazing. They're just so full of knowledge and rich of knowledge. Let me know where you'd like me to go next. It's a little bit of an open book. I am going to do the series on, I'm going to do some Saxon London soon, and then also medieval London. And we've got Dickens London coming up, a few of those others. But yeah, any other things, I always look forward to hearing your suggestions. Take care.
Over the meadow, over the stream, it's where I am going and where I have been. It's been a long day now, it's time for a beer, and now for home, of course I must steer. It's over the meadow,